The 2020 season might be over, but the 2021 excitement, oh, that's just beginning. Who will be the next Broncos GM, and what does it all mean for Drew Lock and the 2021 Broncos? We'll attempt to answer it all in the final episode of Broncos Weekend this season. Welcome in to Broncos Weekend, everybody. I'm Matt Boyer alongside Alexis Perry and the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. Guys, we hit it, the finish line. 18 episodes later, we're here. How we feeling?
Feel pretty good, man. Beautiful day in January in Colorado. I just wish we would be coming off a Super Bowl victory, but maybe next year.
What he said.
Yeah, exactly. Steve, 2021's here. We're turning the page, so that's Super Bowl. It might be in sight. The Broncos, the big offseason news so far, the GM search, we'll get to that in a little bit. But as we've been saying all season long, these player evaluations, they're ongoing. Well, guess what? 2020, it's over, it's done, it's in the books, and these evaluations are finished for a lot of these players, including quarterback Drew Lock, as we take a look at some of Drew Lock's statistics from the past season. Steve, what were your biggest takeaways from Drew's season, and what do you think this offseason means for him as a starter?
Yeah, well, 2,933 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. It was an okay year by any standard. I know that Drew Lock didn't play as well as he wanted to play. He didn't play as well as we all wanted him to play. But I think that he did show some bright spots, and I think that he still has a ton of potential. I love his heart. I love his work ethic, and I think that he's going to get better, especially if we stay in the same system and he's able to run it back again next year. There'll probably be a little bit of competition for him in camp to make sure that if he doesn't step up, someone else will be able to step in and run with it as well.
Lock talked about after the season getting better, film review, getting together with some of his teammates, improving with a full offseason. Alexis, this offense does have a lot of young, talented pieces that Lock was alluding to. So with a full offseason, what does this offense look like?
Yeah, I immediately think of those young wide receivers and KJ Hamler and Jeudy. John Elway, he spent a ton of draft capital in those guys last year. So I think this year, like Locke mentioned in his postseason press conferences, getting together with those guys, even if things aren't totally normal in terms of OTAs or training camp or preseason games, even if it's not totally normal, if those guys can just get together this offseason, I think the chemistry heading into 2021 will be so much better between Locke and his young receivers. But I think the biggest thing heading into 2021 is the fact that you kind of alluded to this a little bit, Steve. Pat Shurmur, if he is back and all signs are pointing to him being back next year, I think this team is already light years ahead of where they were last year, given the fact that they don't have to start from scratch. They have a foundation. All they need to do is really go in, tweak some things, make things a little bit better for Drew Lock and the weapons that he has, and just continue to grow from there. So I think if Pat Shurmur is back in 2021, that is great news for Drew and his young weapons.
Youth and cohesion were the big storylines on offense for the Broncos this season, but on defense, it was the injuries. Vic Fangio said at the end of the season, the number one priority for the Broncos defense is just getting healthy, getting some of those pieces back. So, Alexis, as you think about those guys that have to get healthy, whose return might boost the Broncos the most in 2021?
Well, keep in mind, especially on the defensive side, we're not really sure who's going to be back here for the Denver Broncos. So hypothetically speaking, say all these guys are back this year, which isn't going to happen. Von Miller is the no-brainer, of course, but I think a guy that we don't talk about a lot is Jurrell Casey. That move last year, that trade for Jurrell Casey was considered one of the sneakiest moves made throughout the entire league last offseason. He is seriously one of the most underrated interior defensive linemen in the league. I think this year, if he would have played, he probably would have made his 6th straight Pro Bowl. The Broncos really struggled defending the run this year. They ranked towards the bottom of the league, giving up about 130 yards per game, and I don't think that number would have been as high with Jurrell Casey in the lineup. And then, of course, I need to mention Bryce Callahan. I think in terms of the Broncos secondary, he truly is a lockdown slot corner for this team. It'd be really nice to have a guy in the cornerback position that Coach Fangio doesn't need to worry about.
Steve, that was the players that were hurt. For the guys that were on the field, though, who do you think stood out, and who do you think took the biggest jumps as far as the guys that were able to get on the field this year for the Broncos?
Yeah, a lot of guys stepped up. I like to say the Sean Williams stepped up, Draymond Jones stepped up, but the guy who I'm going to feature is Malik Reed. We knew going into the season that he was going to contribute some, especially on third down when Von Miller or Bradley Chubb, something was wrong with them. But once Von Miller went down, we knew that he was going to play a significant role. He and Jeremiah Tachu, but Malik Reed really stepped up, 8 sacks, 53 tackles. He showed that he deserves to play at this level. And all the while, he was playing special teams as well. So I think Malik Reed showed that he can be a really effective player at this level.
The guy who was extremely effective, putting in the work after practice almost every single day, getting that sack total up. Very, very impressed by the second-year player out of the University of Nevada. Now, speaking of putting in the work, this rookie class for the Broncos, the 5th most rookie snaps of any team in 2020, 4,481 snaps for the Broncos rookies this season. And two of the guys that played the most were Jeudy and Michael Ojemudia as we take a look at their stats from the last season. Two guys who were tested but also put up solid numbers. Alexis, we're looking at Jeudy and Ojemudia. You don't have to pick them, but of the rookies that did get a lot of playing time this year, who stood out and made the biggest jump?
I have to give a hat tip just right off the bat to Lloyd Cushenberry. He was highly impressive this year, but I do actually want to talk about one of the guys who we were just mentioning there between Jeudy and Michael Ojemudia, because Ojemudia was given an incredibly tall task coming in to be the number 2 corner his rookie season, and he really had some ups and downs this year. He had some really, really great games like we saw week 17 against the Raiders, and then he had some games where he wasn't so great, like that Steelers game, and other games where he just didn't play at all. So he experienced some adversity his rookie year, and I think one guy that he really needs to have some conversations with this offseason is Kareem Jackson. That's a guy who his rookie year in Houston struggled mightily, and he was given a ton of flack from the team and the media alike, and that's something that Michael Ojemudia did experience this year. So I hope that he can have some conversations with K-Jack and ask him, hey, how can I take this rookie season that was very up and down for me and use that to fuel and really kickstart my NFL career? I think this time next year, we're going to be looking at Michael Ojemudia and saying, wow, what a leap for him, and it's all because of the adversity he faced this year.
Steve Atwater was saying, wow, when Michael Ojemudia was bringing the heat in Week 17 against the Raiders. Steve, Ojemudia is a guy that I know you liked seeing in Week 17, took big gains, but is there another rookie that you caught your eye this season?
Yeah, quite a few of the guys caught my eye. Like Alexis said, I think Lloyd Cushenberry did a great job stepping in, playing as many snaps as he did to be able to get this offense down. Now, it wasn't perfect. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't perfect. Sure. But to be able to come in and play from the first game of the season through the 16th game of the season, I think is very impressive, and I think he has a very high ceiling. Jeudy is a guy who we know he's a superstar. He had some rough games throughout the year, but I am a Jeudy believer. I thought he was the best receiver coming out in the draft, and I still stand by that. And I think he's going to have a magnificent career. He's going to bounce back like no other. So, and he had a great year. I mean, not a great year. He had a good year.
That 92-yarder in the last game was,
I was going to say,
impressive.
Yeah. Over 800 yards receiving. Led the team in receiving yards. So I think his ceiling is still pretty high, and I think that he's going to get much better in the offseason and come back next year and make a lot of people happy.